Find me on Facebook under Ethical Preparedness page. Just use the terms Ethical Preparedness page in Facebook search box. A good character is the best tombstone. Those who loved you and were helped by you will remember you when forget-me-nots have withered. Carve your name on hearts, not on marble. Author Charles H. Spurgeon. I've seen many people fail to take certain steps to protect themselves legally after a self-defense action, and it's either gotten them into legal trouble or it almost has. And we're going to discuss one of the important steps that you should immediately take after you've had a self-defense incident. And we'll jump right into that right after the channel intro. Remember, you are ultimately responsible for protecting yourself and for providing for yourself. Live your life with honor and integrity, and always be the wolf hunter. Don't be the sheep, and never be the wolf. A recent incident happened which caused me to do this video because this is a mistake that I've seen many people make after they've had a self-defense incident. And I think it's important to get this information out there because I've seen this happen more than once to good, honest people. So in this recent incident, a man called 911 and reported that a guy on a motorcycle had pointed a handgun at him as they were both traveling down a main road. And then he notified the dispatcher of which way the armed guy on the motorcycle was now traveling. Now I was on duty and I was in the area that day, and I spotted that suspect guy on the motorcycle and I initiated a traffic stop. Now this guy on the motorcycle was wearing all dark clothing, and he had a helmet on that pretty much obscured his face. And again, it was reported to me that he was armed with a handgun and had just threatened somebody with it. Obviously, once I got this guy stopped, all of the above factors had me very concerned. Was he acting compliant so he could get the drop on me? I've had that happen to me before. And why had he pointed a handgun at somebody else to begin with? Was he enraged on drugs and alcohol, and was I about to receive the brunt of his anger? Again, the only information that I had at that time was that the guy was on the roadway, in public, and pointed a gun at somebody. Now, I like to keep my cool, so I never pointed my duty weapon at him, but I had my weapon ready to rock and roll if needed. And I got the guy handcuffed, and I found the .45 caliber handgun holstered underneath his jacket. Now, after I interviewed the motorcycle driver, I found out that he and the other driver had tried to merge into the same lane. And then one thing turned into another, and they began zipping around each other. Basically, a road rage incident began unfolding. And once the other driver started purposely getting too close to him and began veering his car dangerously close to his motorcycle, that's when he began to fear for his life because he feared the other driver was going to use his car to ram him off of his motorcycle as they were going over 50 miles per hour down the road. And he also advised me that he never actually pointed his handgun at the other driver, but simply lifted his jacket to show that he was armed. And he said that he did this to let the other driver know that he needed to back off and no longer put his life in danger. Now, while I was interviewing the armed guy on the motorcycle, another officer had met up with the guy in the other vehicle and did confirm that he never did actually point his handgun at the other driver, that he only lifted his jacket to show that he was armed. And it was also confirmed that they had begun to zip and veer around each other and that it was turning into a road rage incident prior to the holstered gun being displayed. Now, how it came about that it was dispatched out that he actually pointed the firearm, we never found that out. We don't know if the other driver initially said it in his original 911 call, or if the dispatcher just simply dispatched it out wrong. But all of that is besides the point. The point of this video was that the original caller gave his side of the story to police first, and that was the only information that I had to go off of when I stopped the armed guy on the motorcycle. Basically put, the only information that I had when I stopped the guy on the motorcycle was that he was armed with a handgun and threatening people with his handgun. And when any cop is dealing with a person that they believe to be armed and threatening others, then that makes for a very dangerous situation for that person who was stopped by the police, and could make for a situation where it can turn deadly if that person decides to resist the police in any way. The police are only going to know what somebody tells them. So if you're a legal gun carrier and the other person calls the police and gives them a false statement of what happened, then that puts you on the defensive legally when the police show up. And that's because generally, now not always, but generally, when an incident happens, the good people generally call the police, and the bad guys generally want nothing to do with the police. So naturally, the police are going to, at least initially, lean towards the 911 caller as being the victim, and whoever didn't call 911 as being the suspect. So if you have to act in any way to defend yourself, especially if a weapon is involved, even if you never actually even pull that weapon out or use it, you need to call 911 immediately to give your side of the story. First, we have to remember that the majority of the time that a good guy uses a gun or any other weapon to protect himself, that the majority of the time that the weapon is never actually used. The majority of the time the weapon is just displayed to warn the bad guy that the good guy is armed and just wants to be left alone. And second, we have to remember that if you don't call 911 to give your side of the story as soon as possible, that the other person may call 911 to give a false story in order to try to protect themselves. So just remember, when the cops respond to an incident, you want them to respond with the information that you provide them and not the bad guy. So folks, this video is just to give you something to consider should you find yourself in a situation where you have to defend yourself, even if all you do is display your weapon and the situation never turns violent. If you want to experience truly feeling alive, try experiencing true combat against an evil, a man destined to hurt somebody else that you found him first. Combat so intimate you can smell your opponent's breath and see the hatred in his eyes towards you. When the dust settles and you emerge as the victor against this evil, then